Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Podcast Host Revealed. I'm your host, Andrew Menczel. And on this episode, I'm joined by Johnny Leary from the Saturday Quiz. Now, he describes himself in his own Twitter bio as charming conversationalist. So, a lot to live up to, Johnny. He's an actor on the Newsreader, Glitch TV, and The Letdown. And he is, of course, host of the Saturday Quiz podcast. Johnny, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Andy. Nice to see you. Nice
Yeah,
to
great
be
to
here.
see you. So, full disclosure to anybody listening, and there's been a few of these
There's
on
been
the
a few
episode.
listeners.
No, there's been a few people I've had on that I know quite well. So, Johnny and I,
Right.
old friends, used to go to the cricket a lot together. I think the last cricket match we went to was the 2015 World Cup final. So, we went out on a high.
Yeah, I think that's true, indeed. And
So, yeah,
I was planning on going to the Boxing Day test this year because I'm in Melbourne now. And but due to COVID, I decided not to go.
big mistake. You missed Scotty Boland
I
tearing through the
know.
bombs.
Absolutely. Shocking omission.
Yes. So Johnny got to listen to my pre-cricket unfiltered takes before I'd started a podcast. So he was actually one of the biggest supporters of me starting the podcast, just so I wouldn't bother him anymore with my cricket
Yeah.
takes, that I would take them to an audience instead.
I've got to be honest, I have not listened to a single one of your cricket podcasts.
Okay, get out. I've only done like 500 episodes, but you got it all in person when we were at the
I
cricket.
did. Yeah.
All right, we're not here to talk cricket, and we're not talking to hear about our friendship. We're here to talk about the Saturday Quiz. We haven't had a quiz podcast host on yet, a quiz master, so to speak. But let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
Why did you start the show?
I started the show. It's funny. I started a kind of prototype of what has become the Saturday Quiz when I was living in Los Angeles, and I kind of, I'm an actor is my normal job or my usual job. But at the time, I was doing very little acting. There was very little work around for me. So I kind of, needed something to do. And I bought myself a microphone on Facebook Marketplace. And I kind of thought I had a good idea for a podcast. I thought, because I've always been interested in quizzes and trivia and things like that. And so on a Saturday morning, often I would get the quiz, the 25 question quiz that's in the Good Weekend in the Sydney Morning Herald or the Age over here in Australia. And I noticed that they would the Channel 9 papers or the Fairfax papers, the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age, would put their quiz up online, and so you could look at it online. And I noticed that they did that before, before it was published in the paper. So it was up at kind of late on a Friday night. And because I was living in Los Angeles at the time, that was actually first thing Friday morning over there. And so I had this idea that I would sit around with friends and we would just do the quiz together as we normally would, on a Saturday morning, over coffee or whatever. And we just all jam and come up with the correct answers.
A quiz jam.
A quiz jam. Yeah.
Love it.
And so I kind of conceived this podcast then, and I called it the Good Weekend Quiz podcast. And so because I had a bunch of friends over in LA, a bunch of mainly Australians.
Other unemployed actors.
Other unemployed actors, yes. We'd kind of get together, and I'd host it, I'd ask the questions, and we'd sort of come up with the answers together. And so that was a kind of prototype episode. I did like a kind of first prototype episode, just a tester, just to see what it was like. And from that, I learnt that it was a lot better if I knew the answers. So in that first episode, I just was trying to guess the answers along with my guests. But yeah, from the second episode, I kind of went, actually, no, it's better if I've researched the answers so that I can give the guests clues to get them to the right answer. Because I wasn't interested in it being a competition and going, this person's smarter than this person or whatever.
You,
So
you
yeah,
go. I was going to say, as a listener, I think it's really important that you have bits of information because it just keeps it moving.
exactly. Yeah. So I didn't want us to get to a question and go, I don't know that, and nor do my guests, and no one kind of has anything to give to that. Um, so I did that for I think maybe 20 something episodes where I would get in LA, I would get the quiz in the morning, do a little bit of research, have a recording session, and then I would cut it together and upload it so that it was available to my audience, which was mainly in Australia, um, ready for them first thing Saturday morning. And that was sort of pretty good and fun. And so yeah, so I made contact with the Good Weekend, and I said, I'm doing this podcast. I hope that's okay if I can use your questions. And they said, yep, sure. And that the editor of the Good Weekend, Katrina Strickland, had a listen to the first couple of episodes and was really positive and really supportive, and said, that's fine, just please drop the good from your title. So, for
The
legal.
weekend quiz.
So it was the weekend quiz. Um, and so that was kind of good. And then when the worldwide pandemic hit, we decided as a family to come back to Australia, to leave Los Angeles. But I still wanted to continue doing the podcast, but it became a lot kind of trickier because um, although they were very supportive, the Good Weekend weren't going to give me the questions in advance of everyone else. Um, so I was doing the recordings late on a Friday, very late on a Friday night, staying up all night editing it, and then putting to have it uploaded and ready for consumption first
Can I
thing.
just ask, why is the time of release important?
Well, it that's a good question. Because with the nature of my show, because the quiz questions that I use are published in a hard copy newspaper and also uploaded on the internet, um, I feel like, my ideal, or how I sort of envisaged people engaging with the show would be that they would have the hard copy questions in front of them as well as listening along. So they would have, they'd get the paper delivered on Saturday morning. They'd open up the paper and hit play on the podcast at the same time, and kind of do the quiz along with me and my guests. So that's why I was aiming for, the Saturday morning upload.
Right.
So that's why time of release was kind of important. Um, but yeah, when we got back to Australia, I continued to do the Good Weekend, or the weekend quiz, using the Good Weekend questions for probably a couple of months. Um, but it's a big quiz. It's 25 questions, and the episodes were kind of getting unwieldy, and especially as I was often editing them till like 5 o'clock in the morning. um I approached, I knew Eric Jensen, who is the editor in chief at Schwartz Media,
Hmm.
the publishers of the Saturday paper. And so I contacted him and said, hey, I've been doing this for, well, just off of my own accord, but using the Good Weekend quiz, your competitor, the Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. What about if I did it for the Saturday paper? And from that, we kind of had a so that was the second half of 2020. And yeah, they engaged me to create the podcast, the Saturday quiz. And that's only 10 questions, so it's a lot kind of snappier, briefer. And yeah, so I was making the podcast for them for the second half of 2020. And then at the end of that year, they went, thank you very much. And our engagement kind of finished, but I wanted to keep making the podcast. So yeah, so now that the Saturday quiz is made independently by me, but still using their questions. And the big bonus was that they would give me their questions a week in advance so that I could, plan and research and record at a more convenient time. So yeah.
Do they still give you the questions early?
They do still give me the questions early. So yeah, even though I am now independently making the podcast, they do still nice and generously give me the questions a week in advance.
Excellent. Well, the very first episode of Podcast Host Revealed featured Ruby Jones from
Oh
Schwartz
yeah,
Media.
from 7 a.m. Yep.
Yep. So a few questions. I guess, what was it like when they said, look, we don't need you to do the podcast for us anymore? I mean, you're an actor, you used to being dropped, but what was the reasoning they gave you?
That was, well, yeah, it was a commercial decision.
Okay, it's a bullshit.
Not sure entirely what that means. But they were like they were paying me a weekly fee, and I guess in retrospect they probably looked at the numbers and went, well, we're not getting bang for our buck. And yeah, that's
a bit disappointing, because podcasts are a slow burn. Like,
yeah,
you do have to put a bit of time on them to build them up.
Yeah, I agree entirely. And look, it was a bit of a slap in the face when, a couple of months after they dropped me, they launched a different podcast, The Culture, which was Osman Faruqi. But he was the editor at the time at the paper. So it's kind of like because I was only doing the quiz podcast, I think they weren't kind of getting value for money in terms of, I wasn't on staff
doing other stuff.
Producing other stuff. Yeah. So yeah. But I was very much like, what was really good about working for Schwartz is that I had a lot of autonomy. I could pick my own guests, and yeah, and I did the edits of the podcast, and yeah, like I pretty much like did everything. So
it worked fine when you were there. So you're independent in 2021. So early 2022, you've had a year. How's it going being an indie podcast?
It's good. Like it's tough. Like every week I kind of having to turn around the podcast on a weekly basis is really challenging. And because of the nature of the podcast, I can't do as I think a lot of podcasts might do. They'll do a kind of bunch at the same time, and then release them
Hmm.
periodically. But no, I am booking, recording, cutting, and uploading and promoting each week. So yeah, it can be a lot, but it's also really rewarding when you see the
Hmm.
numbers kind of going up, and yeah.
Oh, that's good. So the numbers are going up. You mentioned it being rewarding. I mean, you're a performer, both TV, film, acting. So you've done the whole slate. Um, he's giggling when I say that. What about though? Like, how does podcasting fit into that in terms of like, what sort of satisfaction do you get from it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think th- my the I think the satisfaction that I get from it is the I mean, it's just on one level, it's just fun. It's just nice to kind of hang out with um funny people. Most of the guests, when I sort of started, especially, most of the guests were friends or colleagues of mine. Um, as I've sort of gone through, there's been other people that I've approached that I haven't met before or known before. Um, but the most fun, I guess, is when I'm on with people with whom I have some rapport, some
Mm.
prior kind of relationship with. So yes, that's the joy for me. Um, yeah,
And yeah, it's good. I mean, it is fun doing podcasts. What about the preparation for each show? How do you sort of you know, because I can imagine, like you said, you got to give hints. We could prepare a lot for a question, and then your guest gets it after 3 seconds, and you don't need any of that
exactly.
material.
Yeah, oh mate, that absolutely is my dilemma, and the it, each episode, as there are only 10 questions, I try to do I try to spread my research in such a way that if there are obvious questions that I predict or I presume that my guests will get in a pretty fast fashion, then I will probably do less research into those questions. And it's funny when my podcast is better when my guests don't know the answer. So if I ask 10 questions and the answers are really obvious or really easy, um, then I get a lot of then my podcast is very brief. Uh, so yeah, I try to look at questions that are kind of, and I try to look at questions from a different way than just the answer. So I'm trying to think of an example, but um, like there was a question the other day about which Asian nation used to be known as Siam, and uh, I don't know if you know the answer, but the answer is Thailand. And um, and so I looked at the kind of political decision making around the change in name, like why that changed, who instigated that change of name, and yeah, and then it sort of talked about that person that
Mm.
was the leader of the
I've seen
country at the
I've
time.
seen the musical, so I know the
You're right.
story.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I guess from a listener's point of view, what you want is interesting information.
Yeah,
People love learning stuff on podcasts. So if you can sort of sprinkle in little interesting factoids that are going to like buzz people's brains, whether the
yeah.
people have got the question right or not, I think that's
That
safe.
that's right. That's right. And where I can, I try to get my guests to give me their kind of interesting take on the information. So I'm there as a sort of conduit for their, clever one-liners or their interesting facts or things like that. Yeah.
Who's the smartest guest you've had? Is there anyone you'd just be like,
Oh.
hold on a bit, come on, like you're nailing all these questions. We're 5 minutes in.
I had
Play dumb.
one of the I had two of the smartest people I think I know on the one episode. So Sean Kelly and Paul Bongiorno. Paul Bongiorno, you would know from his being a journalist for 30 years. And Sean Kelly, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he is fiercely intelligent. He wrote a book called The Game, which is a portrait of Scott Morrison, and it's right here. I'll show you. It's this book,
Yep.
The Game, a portrait of Scott
Kelly.
Morrison by Sean Kelly, and
just vomited in my mouth.
He is dauntingly intelligent. And so they were on the podcast together, and that they knew some stuff. They know a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, so I bet you had to slow them down a bit.
Yeah, but at the same time, Paul Bongiorno loves a chat, so he was quite entertaining, quite witty. Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. What then makes a good episode of Saturday Quiz? What do you think makes a good episode?
I think a good episode of the Saturday Quiz is when, is that when the questions and the guests kind of meet somewhere. So there's, I used to try to match the guests to the questions. So I would get the questions a week in advance, and I'd kind of look through and try to find at least one or two questions that would match with, particular people. So trying to think of an example. There were a couple of times. What was...
I feel like we're in an episode of the Saturday Quiz now. I need to give you a hint.
You do need to give me a hint. Well, yeah, I had... There were a couple of questions when I've had, Celia Piccola and Luke McGregor on the show a couple of times. And there were a couple of questions that seemed to really spark for them. So when somebody knows something and they know a lot about that something, they can talk endlessly about it. And that's when the quiz is, that's when the Saturday Quiz is a good episode, I reckon.
Yeah. So when the riffing comes in, people can, give answers and then expand on it, maybe have a joke, go into a bit, that kind of thing.
And
just go with the process.
And
I've
recently and around this time of year, so March, April is when the Melbourne International Comedy Festival is on.
Great.
And I have a lot of, at this time, I have a lot of comedians on, because they're trying to, push their show, and it's easy to get them on podcasts and go.
They're all attention whores.
Yeah, they totally are. So that's when it's good, I think, when they really fizz with the questions. And I always try to get guests that are somehow connected. So whether they're, like Celia and Luke, they made a TV show together.
So you got that vibe. So you got that chemistry. It's not two strangers brought in and then all of a sudden, hey, that'd be funny. Here, dance, monkey, dance.
So,
What about, have you ever thought about writing your own quiz? So taking out the Saturday Quiz and say you start the Saturday Quiz website and you write your own quiz and you release it on a website, and you have full control over it.
Yeah. I mean, certainly that has been a consideration, and when the relationship with Schwartz Media finished, I was thinking, is that the direction that I go? But I guess it's already a lot of work to make the podcast, and I don't think that me coming up with the questions is value adding, really. So yeah, so I guess as long as they keep supplying me with the questions, I'll keep asking them.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
What about the reception from the audience? One thing about podcasting that you don't get in other mediums is you get a lot of feedback. Sort of, you're quite close to your audience. How does that go with your show? Like, what
I
community engagement do you get?
Yeah, I love that. I crave that. I am always asking my audience to, to leave a review, mainly because I want to know what is working for them and what they like about the show. Um, there's a couple of people on Twitter that follow me and the show on Twitter that engage in that way, and I love, like, every Saturday morning, I love getting those alerts that, someone has commented on the show or things like that. I also, once it went independently produced, I my audience have the ability to support my show financially, and in that they can leave comments or whatever. Um and I also, yeah, I particularly like reading the comments, like even the odd bad review that I've got on iTunes, for example,
Mm,
or Apple Podcasts. Um, I I like to know, because I want to know what does and doesn't work.
yeah,
On Are
let me
you
see if I
looking
can
at the
find
reviews?
one of these bad reviews and read
I'll
it
find
out
it
to
for
you.
you.
Oh, I'm pretty good. So let's see. Because one thing I've noticed from interviewing a lot of podcast hosts is that the bad reviews stick with you a lot more than the good ones. Like, you can read, 50 good reviews, and then someone says, Johnny's shit, and that's all that you think about. Well, I'm
Yeah.
scrolling through here, mate. They're all 5 stars. I haven't really got to a bad one yet. Oh, here we go. Yikes. Listened to first episode and had to stop. Nothing worse than comedians trying really
Trying to be
hard to be
funny.
funny and
Yeah.
failing. I agree with Moo Bear 83. It's
That
a good
it
point.
is a horrible thing
That it is
listening
a
to
horrible
that.
thing. I'm not sure it's
Uh,
applied to your show. Well,
Thank you.
look,
I don't
I've
think it
scrolled down a
does.
lot. I've got like arthritis. I can't feel my thumb, and I've only
There
got one bad review. So I think you're doing pretty well.
Well, thanks. Yeah. There is one that um and yeah, that's just reminded me, looking through the reviews, that during lockdown, and of course I'm in Melbourne, and a lot of my listeners I think are in Melbourne, and we had, a hell of a lockdown. Um and so I think for a good part of 2020 and 2021, my audience really appreciated the feeling of hanging out with friends. Like, that's the vibe of the show. That's the what I'm trying to achieve, is
Mm,
just that experience of sitting around with friends, doing the quiz together, not caring whether you know who is smarter than who, but it's just, oh, that's interesting. Let's unpack. I don't
mm.
know what the
Yeah. Because it
yeah
seems like it's not a passive listen that, some podcasts you listen to, you might be stacking the dishwasher, hanging up the washing, but this one,
yeah
it actually feels like you can actually engage with
yeah
it. You can do the quiz at the same time. You might have a friend who listens to the podcast. You go, "Oh, how hard
yeah
was question 5?" And that
yeah yeah
idiot Pat
yeah
Bramell, that Pat Bramell's so dumb he didn't get it. Fucking Harriet's so smart. You can tell her
yeah
where's the pants in that relationship. Like, you have a bit of a laugh about it, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's one person, I can't remember their name, but they often let me know on Twitter that they, the answer that they were yelling out in the street when they're walking their dog, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Yeah, and someone who's like driving along in traffic and just yelling out the answer, because my guests are too stupid to know what it is. But yeah,
Yeah, Pat
yeah.
Bremmel. Um, Now, look, got a couple of questions to end up, but firstly, you said people can support the show. Just where can people support the show?
So there's a link to my supporter page on wherever they listen to the podcast. So on the description page of my podcast, there is a link that takes you to my supporter page.
Great. And what platform's that on?
I'm on Acast.
Great. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So,
So
listeners,
yeah.
you can support through that. What's the future of the Saturday quiz? And we'll put that link in the show notes for those
Oh yeah,
listening.
great.
Um,
Thanks.
what's the future for the Saturday quiz? How do you see it growing?
Oh wow, that's a really good question.
Thank you.
I growth has been something tricky to kind of uh, grasp. Um, like yeah, I'm actually not quite sure how to. I would like to push the show, and the listenership to the next level. But I'm not quite sure the best way to go about that. Actually, maybe that's a question for you.
I
A
mean, could
question
you
that
go
you
full
might be able to
video?
answer.
I mean, could you go full video and do it sort of live on YouTube to
Oh,
get
yeah,
like a
maybe.
live audience vibe? Because, I've started doing my cricket podcast that you've never fucking listened to. Imagine admitting that before an interview. Like someone's been podcasting for almost 10 years. Imagine I came on now and said, oh, yeah, Saturday Quiz, never listened to it. I'm just interviewing you about it. I mean, you're not interviewing me, so I guess.
No, I'm not
Um,
interviewing you about your cricket
And you
podcast.
did like for those listening, we used to go to every day of the test match, Johnny,
Yeah.
I, and Pat Bremmel, that idiot, and we would sit there and it would be
Well,
incessant
we
cricket podcast
scored.
talk.
We
Yeah, we
we
scored matches.
yeah, we took like the big scoring
We
notepad.
I remember we tried to score Michael Clark's triple century. Were you there for that one?
Oh,
And we
yes, I
just
think I
by the
was.
time we got onto
It
like the
was a
third
mess
page
because it was
and
like,
we were like,
what?
oh, we
Who's
threw in the towel. I think it was
yeah.
the first match we gave up scoring because Pup scored too many runs. Yeah, so maybe live on YouTube would be a good vibe. I mean, you can do it something like
Yeah,
we're
maybe.
recording
The
this.
the interesting thing about, well, maybe it's not interesting, I'm not sure. But one of the things about my podcast is that it is edited to within an inch of its life.
Mm,
Because it's a quiz, and often when you ask someone a question, you'll say, what is the capital of Burma or whatever? And there is deep silence. There
mm.
is like a long pause before people know, if even if they know the answer, there's still usually that like thinking time.
But that doesn't work on audio, but say it
No,
would work
yeah.
on YouTube because you'd have that dramatic, you'd be looking at them and then you could edit the audio afterwards.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's true. I guess
Anyway,
that's I
look,
guess
we're
that's
happy to
true.
talk about this afterwards. I can help you with the Saturday quiz. But yeah, love to see it grow. I actually think, there's not many quiz podcasts out there. And
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting area. And as I said, I think when technology gets better, there'll be so many things you can do with it. Like people can interact live with the audio. But yeah, I think it has huge potential.
Yeah. Thanks. I was considering doing like live shows, like actually uh
Yeah, in a venue with guests.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And
There's
we and
there's
I'm
um
Wicom.
there's another podcast called Don't You Know Who I Am? Which oh god, what's his name? Josh.
Steps.
No,
Mm. Oh, Josh, I've heard of this one, but yeah, go on.
hang on.
It's not the Saturday quiz. Just we don't need the answer.
Hang on, what's it called? Let me look it up. Sorry, this is good for you.
This is what would get cut out of the Saturday quiz.
Yeah. Josh Earl.
Or Josh
Earl. Yeah. Don't You Know Who I Am, which is a podcast. He's nearly up to his 300th episode. And that is a kind of similar situation where he's the host, and I think he has 3 or maybe 4 guests on each episode, and they're more often than not they're comedians. And
experienced podcaster keeps turning his mic off here. He's a pro. He's gone on mute again. So maybe you shouldn't go onto the live YouTube show.
You know what it is? Yet. I think it's my shush. It's my
his beard
my
is
cable.
massive. That's the thing. He's got this massive beard that keeps turning it off, like a forest, and needs to get shaved.
So Josh Earl has a podcast.
Fucking down. You should get a Manscaped to sponsor you. Like
that'd be good.
They'll sponsor anyone, and you get clippers for you. You get clippers for your beard and your testicles. So
how do you attract a sponsor? That's my big question.
Okay. Well, I'm actually starting a platform called Podshare, which is launching at the end of March, where you'll be able to list your podcast and your demographic and your area, and then therefore to connect with advertisers. But Manscaped, just email them. I'll give you a contact when we get off here.
Okay.
Because I'm just worried about you. Like they could really do.
Yeah, I do have a big hefty beard at the moment.
Yeah.
Anyway, Josh Earl's podcast. Don't know who I am.
We got there.
He does live shows and he records them live, and I that is something that is sort of on my radar, but not something that I've managed to get done yet.
Well, I love it. I love that idea. I love it going to YouTube. You can steal that if you want.
Thanks.
And I love you shaving your beard. All right, so we've got one question.
That's it? Really? Okay.
Well, I mean, we could talk for
we could.
We keep talking, but I think, look, I want to know, I ask everybody, what's your favorite memory related to podcasting since you started your show? Because I have been blessed, and I hate using that, but podcasting has been a joy. What joyful moment has it brought you?
Joyful moment. There's many joyful moments. I think probably some of my funnest experiences were when we moved back to Australia, and I was still doing it. I was still doing the quiz as the weekend quiz, and there were a couple of times where I hadn't quite got into doing it over Zoom, or doing it. I was still doing it in-person interviews with my guests. But then when we came back to Australia, and there were 2 weeks, we had to do 2 weeks home quarantine. So I couldn't do any in-person interviews except with my partner, Alison Bell, who was so generous with her lack of general knowledge that she would sit in our kitchen and do the quiz and be my only guest. I usually have 2 guests on my show, but she would be my only guest for a couple of episodes, and it was. I know that she was having a terrible time because she's not. Yeah, she doesn't really like general knowledge or trivia or anything like that. That's very definitely my thing.
On top of being stuck in the house for 2 weeks with you and the kid, can't leave. So she's like, no break from your partner. And then you're like, okay, let's record 2 podcasts while we're in lockdown about stuff you're not interested in.
Exactly. And
fantastic.
She like that's the joy.
And that's your most joyful memory.
That's my joy because it showed showed her love for me, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Johnny, thanks for joining me on Podcast Host Revealed to talk
My
about the Saturday
absolute
quiz.
pleasure.
Congratulations on the show. Can't wait to see it develop. And yeah, all the details are in the show notes. If you want to support the Saturday quiz, take a listen to it. It's a lot of fun. And we'll be back soon with another episode. Cheers.
Thanks, Menace.
Thanks, Johnny.